When the human mind attempts to visualize the end of days, it almost instinctively drifts toward fire. We conjure images of burning cities, the cacophony of sirens, the red skies of nuclear winter, and the chaotic unraveling of civilization. We associate the apocalypse with noise. But there is a place on this planet where the end of the world looks remarkably different. It is a place where the apocalypse has, in a sense, already occurred, leaving behind a landscape defined not by flames, but by a terrible, beautiful, and absolute silence. This is Antarctica. To the uninitiated eye, it is a void, a blank error on the map of the world. It is a canvas of blinding white that stretches from the edge of the sea to the curvature of the earth, a continent of ice larger than Europe and Australia combined, sitting in solitary confinement at the bottom of the globe. It appears static. It appears dead. It looks like a place where the arrow of time has simply snapped. But this stillness is a profound deception. The ice is not a lid. It is a curtain. And beneath that frozen veil lies a world as complex, as violent, and as mysterious as anything on the surface of the earth. Tonight, we begin a descent into the frozen tomb. We are going to peel back the white layer to reveal a continent that has been erased from history, a land of ghost mountains, hidden rivers that flow uphill, and geological scars that hold the secrets of our planet's most violent extinctions. But to understand what is hidden, we must first confront the barrier itself. Antarctica is a superlative in every category of hostility. It is the highest, driest, coldest, and windiest continent on Earth. It is a desert built of water. The ice here is not merely a seasonal crust or a thin glazing of frost. It is a geological weight, a crushing physical presence that defies comprehension. On average, the ice sheet is over 2 kilometers thick. In its deepest basins, it plunges down to nearly 5 kilometers. To visualize this, imagine taking the Rocky Mountains in their entirety and burying them completely in solid ice, so deep that not even their highest peaks would break the surface.
This immense mass, accumulated over 34 million years of relentless snowfall, is heavy. It is a weight that the Earth itself struggles to bear. The ice is so colossal that it has physically crushed the continent beneath it. Through a phenomenon known as isostatic depression, the sheer tonnage of the ice sheet has pushed the bedrock of Antarctica down into the Earth's mantle by hundreds of meters. The continent is literally bowing in submission to the water that covers it. If the ice were to vanish instantly today, the land would eventually spring back up, rebounding like a slow-motion mattress, but the process would take 10,000 years. We are walking on a land that is being held down by a suffocating white hand. But the ice is not just heavy, it is old. The air trapped in the deepest layers is a fossil atmosphere, a sample of the sky from a time before human beings existed. The dust frozen in its strata is the debris of ancient volcanic eruptions and asteroid impacts that darkened the sun eons ago. Walking on the surface of the Antarctic plateau is walking on a frozen library of Earth's history, where every footstep lands on a chapter written in isotopes and cold. It feels solid, immovable, and eternal. But beneath our feet, the geography of the underworld tells a different story. If you could strip away the ice, if you could melt the lid of the world with a godlike hand, the landscape revealed underneath would not be a flat, scoured plain. It would be a rugged, dramatic, and towering wilderness that rivals the most spectacular ranges on Earth. In the middle of East Antarctica, buried completely beneath the thickest part of the ice sheet, lies a mountain range that defies belief. These are the Gamburtsev Mountains. They are ghosts. No human eye has ever seen their peaks. No wind has touched their summits for 30 million years. They exist in a state of permanent, crushing darkness.
They were discovered not by explorers on foot, but by Russian scientists in the 1950s using seismic sounding equipment, listening to the echoes bouncing off the rock deep below. What they found was staggering. This is not a collection of small hills. It is a range the size of the European Alps. The peaks rise up to 3,000 meters, tearing into the underbelly of the ice. There are jagged cliffs, deep U-shaped valleys carved by ancient rivers, and sharp summits that look as though they were sculpted yesterday. The mystery is how they are still there. Typically, glaciers act like sandpaper, grinding mountains down to flat stumps over millions of years of erosion. But here, the ice seems to have acted as a preservative. It froze the mountains in time, protecting them from the elements like a fly trapped in amber. They are a fossilized landscape, a pristine mountain range standing in absolute darkness, supporting the weight of a continent on their shoulders. But there are things beneath the ice that are far more ominous than mountains. In the region known as Wilkes Land, hidden beneath kilometers of frozen water, satellites have detected something strange. They didn't see it with light, they felt it with gravity. There is a mascon, a massive concentration of mass buried deep in the crust. It pulls at the satellites as they pass overhead, a gravitational scar that hints at a circular structure nearly 500 kilometers wide. This is the Wilkes Land anomaly. The leading theory is that it is an impact crater, but not just any crater. If the interpretation is correct, it is the scar of a meteor impact 2 or 3 times larger than the Chicxulub asteroid that killed the dinosaurs. It sits there, a silent circular wound in the bedrock, completely filled and hidden by the ice. To understand the scale of this violence, we have to realize that the object that made this hole would have been an asteroid perhaps 30 miles across. Its impact would have rung the Earth like a bell and sent a shockwave through the planet strong enough to shatter the crust on the opposite side of the world.
The dating of this potential crater leads us to a chilling possibility. The rocks in this region suggest an age of roughly 250 million years. This number rings a bell in the mind of every geologist. It aligns perfectly with the date of the Great Dying, the Permian-Triassic extinction event. This was the moment when 96% of all life on Earth vanished. It was the closest life on our planet ever came to being completely extinguished. For years, we blamed the Siberian Traps volcanoes for poisoning the atmosphere, but the Wilkes Land crater suggests a darker, more complex conspiracy. Could this be the trigger? Could this impact have punched through the Earth's crust, shaking the mantle so violently that it caused the volcanoes on the other side of the globe to erupt in a sympathetic apocalypse? It is possible that Antarctica holds the smoking gun for the greatest murder mystery in planetary history. The evidence is there, locked under the coldest blanket on Earth, waiting for us to drill down and touch the stone that killed the old world. It is a graveyard, hiding the weapon that created it. This land is a fortress of contradictions. It is a place where the ice preserves the mountains but crushes the continent. It is a place where the silence is absolute, yet it covers the evidence of the loudest impact the world has ever known. As we stand on the surface, looking out at the endless white horizon, we are separated from these secrets by a barrier of time and pressure. But the ice is not just rock and stone. As we are about to discover, deep within this frozen sarcophagus, there are veins of liquid. There are places where the pressure and heat of the Earth have created pockets of the impossible. We are about to descend further, past the mountains and the craters, into the liquid heart of the continent, where life has found a way to survive in the dark for 15 million years. The tomb is not empty. It is waiting.
The discovery of the hidden water did not happen all at once. It began as a ghost signal in the data, a glitch in the machinery of the Cold War. In 1964, Soviet researchers dragging seismic equipment across the endless white wastes near the Pole of Cold noticed something impossible in their readings. The sound waves they fired down into the ice usually bounced back unevenly, reflecting the jagged, rough terrain of the buried bedrock. But in one specific, vast area, the signal changed. It came back flat, perfectly, impossibly flat. For years, this was dismissed as an anomaly. It wasn't until 1973, when British, American, and Danish teams flew airborne radar surveys over the region, that the picture cleared. The radar penetrated the ice and revealed a boundary that looked exactly like the surface of a mirror. It was the reflection of water. There was a liquid horizon buried beneath 4 kilometers of solid ice. The world was not looking at a frozen pocket, it was looking at a subterranean sea. This is Lake Vostok. It is the crown jewel of the Antarctic underworld. To grasp its scale, imagine Lake Ontario in North America, but place a roof of ice over it that is over 2 miles thick. It is a body of water that has been hermetically sealed off from the rest of the planet for at least 15 million years. It is the loneliest water on Earth. The lake exists in perpetual, crushing darkness. The pressure at the surface of the water is over 350 atmospheres, enough to crush a nuclear submarine like a soda can.
Yet, the water does not freeze. It is kept liquid by a delicate thermal paradox. The immense pressure of the ice above lowers the freezing point, while the gentle warmth of the Earth's geothermal heat radiates from below. The ice acts as a perfect insulator, a thermal blanket trapping the planet's internal fire against the water.
The isolation of Lake Vostok has created a chemical environment unlike anything else on Earth. As the glacier slowly moves over the lake, the bottom layers of the ice melt, releasing ancient air bubbles trapped millions of years ago. Because the lake is sealed under high pressure, this gas cannot escape. It dissolves. Over eons, this process has pumped the lake full of gas, making the water of Vostok supersaturated with oxygen, perhaps 50 times more oxygenated than a normal freshwater lake. In most contexts, oxygen is the breath of life, but at these extreme concentrations, it becomes a toxic chemical agent. The water of Vostok is not just dark and cold, it is a hyperoxygenated chemical pressure cooker. And yet, life is tenacious. When scientists drilled down toward the lake, stopping just short of breaching it to avoid contamination, they retrieved samples of the accretion ice, lake water that had frozen onto the bottom of the glacier. In this ice, they found DNA. They found the signatures of bacteria, extremophiles that thrive in the cold and dark. But there were stranger findings. Some DNA sequences hinted at more complex life, multicellular organisms, fungi, and even crustaceans. There was a genetic signature that looked suspiciously like a parasite usually found in fish. This sparked a wild, controversial theory. Could there be fish down there? Could there be blind white shoals swimming in the eternal dark of Vostok, protected from the ice ages that ravaged the surface? We do not know. The lake remains breached only in our imagination, a sealed biosphere waiting for a camera to one day reveal its ghosts. The obsession with Lake Vostok is not just about understanding Earth. It is a rehearsal. It is a test run for the search for alien life. When we look out into the solar system, we see moons like Europa orbiting Jupiter and Enceladus orbiting Saturn. These are ice worlds, thick frozen shells covering vast liquid saltwater oceans. They look exactly like Lake Vostok, just on a planetary scale. If life can exist in the cold, dark, high-pressure waters of Vostok, cut off from the sun for millions of years, then it can exist on Europa.
The ice of the south is a telescope looking into the possibilities of the cosmos. But Antarctica is a land of contradictions, and while water hides in the deep, fire rules the heights. Standing on Ross Island, rising nearly 4 kilometers out of the frozen sea, is the southmost active volcano on Earth, Mount Erebus. It is a sentinel of fire in a kingdom of ice. Erebus has been erupting continuously for at least 1.3 million years. At its summit, it holds a rare geological feature found in only a handful of places on the planet, a permanent churning lava lake. The sight is surreal. Against the blinding white backdrop of the glaciers and the deep blue of the polar sky, a plume of steam and sulfurous gas rises constantly from the crater. At night, in the months of total winter darkness, the summit glows with a menacing red light, a portal to the Earth's interior bubbling at 1,000 degrees Celsius, surrounded by ice that is frozen solid at -50. It is a thermal battleground. But the true wonder of Erebus is not at the summit, it is on the flanks. The heat escaping from the volcano seeps through the rocks and encounters the ice, creating ghost-like structures called fumaroles, towers of ice up to 10 meters high that vent steam into the polar air. Below these towers, the heat has carved out a secret world. It has melted complex networks of caves directly into the glacier. These are the ice caves of Erebus. To enter them is to step into a fantasy landscape. The walls are made of blue ice, translucent and glowing with filtered light. The floor is often warm rock or soft volcanic sand. The air is thick with steam. It is a humid, misty environment, protected from the violent winds raging just a few meters above.
The temperature difference inside these caves is staggering. Outside, the wind chill can freeze exposed skin in minutes. Inside, deep in the thermal pockets, the temperature can reach a balmy 77 degrees Fahrenheit. It is a t-shirt weather environment buried in the coldest place on Earth. If you were to stand there in the warm dark, listening to the drip of melting ice, you would lose all sense of geography.
You are not in a freezer, you are in a sauna. And where there is heat and water, biology follows. Scientists exploring these steam caves have found traces of DNA that do not match the simple organisms found on the surface. They have found mosses, algae, and small invertebrates flourishing in the warm, damp dark. The analysis hints at something more tantalizing, genetic sequences that do not fully match any known species. It opens the possibility that the caves of Erebus host a unique subterranean ecosystem, creatures of the hollow mountain that have never seen the sky. Erebus is the visible giant, but it is likely just the chimney of a much larger factory. In 2017, researchers analyzing radar maps of West Antarctica made a startling discovery. Buried 2 kilometers beneath the ice, hidden from view, they found the conical shapes of 91 previously unknown volcanoes. This makes the West Antarctic Rift System one of the largest volcanic provinces on Earth. Most are asleep, crushed under the weight of the ice sheet, but if they were to wake up, the consequences would be global. An eruption beneath the ice would create vast lakes of lubricant, unsticking the ice sheet and allowing it to slide faster into the ocean. The ice is sitting on a stove that might be slowly turning on.
It is hard to imagine, standing on the barren plateau today, that this land was once loud with life. But if you were to travel back 100 million years to the Cretaceous period, the silence would be replaced by the roar of a waterfall and the call of beasts. Antarctica was not an ice cube. It was a cornerstone of the supercontinent Gondwana, connected to Australia and South America. It was lush. It was covered in temperate rainforests, similar to the ones found in New Zealand today. Rivers wound through valleys that are now buried under miles of ice. The evidence of this lost world is preserved in the rock. On the Antarctic Peninsula and the Transantarctic Mountains, paleontologists have found fossils that shatter our perception of the poles. They have found the leaves of the southern beech tree and the fronds of giant ferns. But the most baffling discovery is the root systems. We find fossilized roots preserved in situ, exactly where they grew. This tells us something profound. These trees were not washed here by a flood. They lived here. But living at the pole presents a unique challenge. Even in a warm world, the tilt of the Earth dictates that the poles experience months of total darkness in winter. These were the polar forests. The trees had to adapt to a light cycle found nowhere else, likely going dormant in the winter, shedding their leaves to survive the long, dark night, and then exploding into frantic growth during the 24-hour sunlight of the summer. It was a forest of shadows, a biome adapted to a rhythm of light and dark that would be alien to any modern tree. The green history of Antarctica had one final feverish chapter. About 50 million years ago, during the Eocene epoch, the Earth experienced a sudden, intense spike in global temperature. During this time, the coast of Antarctica was not just temperate, it was subtropical. Drill cores taken from the seabed off the coast of Wilkes Land have revealed the pollen of palm trees and the spores of macadamia plants. Imagine a landscape that looks like the coast of Florida, but situated at the South Pole. Crocodiles and turtle-like reptiles likely basked on the shores.
It was the planet's last great heat wave, a final luxuriant bloom before the long cooling began. It serves as a potent reminder of how sensitive the polar regions are to the chemistry of the atmosphere. The difference between an ice sheet and a palm tree is just a few hundred parts per million of carbon dioxide. And as we are about to see, that chemistry is changing again. The cycle is turning, and the ice is beginning to remember its liquid past. If we view Antarctica as a continental fortress, a white citadel protected by currents and cold, then we must also acknowledge that every fortress has a gate. Every defense has a point of failure. For the southern continent, that point lies on the remote coast of West Antarctica, flowing into the dark, turbulent waters of the Amundsen Sea. It is a single, colossal river of ice, known to glaciologists as the Thwaites Glacier. But in the whispers of the scientific community and the headlines of the world, it carries a darker, heavier name. It is called the Doomsday Glacier. This title is not born of melodrama. It is a cold reflection of physics. Thwaites is a monster. It is a frozen expanse roughly the size of the state of Florida or Great Britain. It is over 70 miles wide at its face, a chaotic, churning wall of white that towers high above the ocean's surface and extends thousands of feet below it. But its size is not the reason for the fear. The fear comes from its function. Thwaites acts as a keystone. In architecture, the keystone is the central block at the top of an arch that locks all other stones in place. If you remove it, the arch does not just sag, it collapses. Thwaites plays this exact role for the West Antarctic ice sheet. It is the cork in the bottle. Behind it, pushing against its back with the weight of billions of tons, lies a vast, deep basin of continental ice that is currently resting below sea level.
For thousands of years, Thwaites has been the brake, but now the brake is failing. The destruction of Thwaites is happening in the dark, hundreds of meters beneath the surface of the ocean, in an ambush from below. Unlike most glaciers that sit on land sloping upward, Thwaites sits on a retrograde slope. As you go further inland, the ground gets deeper, plunging kilometers below sea level. This geometry is a geological trap. Warm, salty ocean water, known as circumpolar deep water, is creeping onto the continental shelf and flowing underneath the floating shelf of the glacier. It invades the cavity, the dark space between the ice and the rock, acting like a blowtorch. We know this because we have sent our machines where we cannot go. Autonomous yellow submarines, lowered through boreholes in the ice, have mapped the seafloor and returned with a haunting image. Etched into the sediment are ribs, hundreds of parallel ridges in the sand. These are footprints. They mark the past positions of the grounding line, revealing that the glacier is capable of sudden, violent bursts of retreat. As the ice melts from below, it detaches from the bedrock, unzipping the continent from the inside out. If Thwaites collapses, it triggers a cascade failure. The neighboring glaciers, Pine Island, Haynes, Pope, Smith, would also destabilize. We would witness a planetary-scale domino effect, potentially raising global sea levels by more than 10 feet, erasing the coastlines of the world. But the threat to Antarctica does not just come from the warming air or the rising sea. It comes from human hunger. Beneath the crushing weight of the ice, and buried deeper still within the sedimentary basins of the continental shelf, lies a secret that turns this pristine wilderness into a target. Antarctica is not just a scientific preserve, it is a vault, and inside that vault is the ghost of the ancient green world. The lush rainforests of Gondwana and the algal blooms of the Cretaceous oceans died, sank, and were cooked by the earth into black gold.
Seismic surveys have probed the continental shelves, revealing the unmistakable architecture of oil. Estimates suggest there could be hundreds of billions of barrels of oil and natural gas locked beneath the Southern Ocean. It is the last great untapped energy prize on Earth. Currently, this treasure is locked away not by technology, but by a piece of paper. The Antarctic Treaty, and specifically the Madrid Protocol, bans all mining and mineral extraction. But treaties are not eternal laws of physics, they are agreements between nations. And the Madrid Protocol has a clause that haunts the future. In the year 2048, the ban on mining can be brought up for review. This date looms like a long shadow over the ice. We are witnessing a silent Cold War, a game of chess played with logistics, concrete, and steel. Nations are building research stations that serve as flags frozen into the ice. The location of a base is never random, it is a strategic claim. Great powers are upgrading runways to handle heavy military transport planes and building nuclear-powered icebreakers. They are mapping the seabed and testing the ice, ensuring that when the treaty comes up for review, they are the ones holding the keys to the gate. The ice is no longer just a barrier, it is a board, and the pieces are moving. As the geopolitical game plays out, the biology of the continent offers a final, chilling twist. The melting ice is releasing more than just water and gas. Ice is nature's most perfect preservative, a cryogenic freezer that suspends the laws of decay. Deep within the permafrost and ancient glacial ice are biological entities that have been dormant for millennia. They are not dead, they are waiting.
The fear of zombie pathogens is a documented reality. In the Arctic, we have already seen giant viruses from 30,000 years ago revived from the permafrost, still infectious. In Antarctica, the ice is far older. It holds biomes from eras before humans existed. The concern is biological dark matter, viruses and bacteria that our immune systems have never encountered. We are biologically naive to these ancient travelers. As the meltwater runs into the ocean and evaporates into the atmosphere, it could carry these microscopic time travelers with it. The melting of the cryosphere is a potential Pandora's box, opening a door to a microbial past that was meant to stay buried forever. Faced with the terrifying speed of the melt, humanity is beginning to consider the unthinkable. If we cannot stop the warming through politics, perhaps we can engineer the planet itself. Scientists are proposing monumental geoengineering projects, building massive underwater curtains to block warm currents from reaching the glaciers, or spraying vast clouds of reflective aerosols into the stratosphere to dim the sun. These are ideas born of profound desperation, a sign that we have reached the point of hacking the planet's operating system to save ourselves from the drowning water. But the ice does not care about our engineering or our treaties. It obeys only the laws of thermodynamics. We saw this violence recently on the Brunt ice shelf, where a crack known as Chasm 1 hunted across the ice for years before finally snapping. An iceberg the size of a major city broke free, generating seismic waves detected on the other side of the world. It was a reminder that the map of Antarctica is being redrawn before our eyes, violently and irreversibly. We must realize that losing the ice is not just about losing a coastline, it is about losing the memory of the Earth. The ice is the only high-resolution logbook we have of how the planet behaves over deep time. It is the Rosetta Stone of the climate. As the glaciers melt, that record is physically destroyed. We are burning the library at the exact moment we are finally learning how to read the books.
Ultimately, the story of Antarctica is not a story of human conquest. It is a story of cycles. The continent was once green, then it was white, and perhaps millions of years from now, long after our names are forgotten, it will be green again. Human ambition is fast, the ice is slow, but in the long run, the ice always wins. There will come a time when the machines stop. When the generators at the South Pole are turned off, the silence will rush back in within seconds. The wind, which never sleeps, will bury the research stations in drifts of hard white snow. The glaciers will grind our steel and concrete into dust. The continent will return to its natural state. It will return to the silence. So, as you lie here in the warmth and safety of your bed, let your mind travel south. Let it drift past the cities, over the dark, churning waters of the Southern Ocean, all the way to the bottom of the world. Imagine yourself standing on the high polar plateau under the endless star-filled night. There is no sound there but the wind polishing the ice. There is no movement but the slow, imperceptible drift of the glaciers sliding toward the sea. It is a place of absolute stillness, a pause in the frantic rhythm of the planet. The secrets of the subglacial lakes, the fire of the hidden volcanoes, and the ghosts of the buried mountains are safe beneath the cold blanket. The earth is holding its memories tight, locking them away in the frozen dark where they cannot be disturbed. You can let go of the questions now. The giant is sleeping, and the world is turning, slow and steady, in the quiet dark. The ice will keep its watch. You are safe. Good night. Antarctica. What if? Doomsday Glacier. Science documentary. Climate change. Ancient history. Geology. Thwaites Glacier. Global warming. Zombie virus. Mystery. Future. Documentary. Nature. Deep ocean.